votes. But that's not the subject of this paper, which I understand, but I'd love to see how that plays out politically. In Angela's case, I really wanted to know more about ways in which white conservatives, in fact, are legitimating white Republican politics, and legitimating for whom? Right? Are they legitimating this for white Democrats? Are they legitimating it for African Americans? Are they just legitimating it for white Republicans who really, really wanted it to be legitimate? For whom is this legitimating? And particularly thinking about James Meredith, right? If you still have David Duke being, labeled Hitler, then he's not really legitimating David Duke, and that may be because he's they're both interesting figures. But exactly how does that process work? A second specific point is just in general. I thought I'd love to hear more about the Neshoba County Fair as a site, which Joseph opened with, the little Joe opened with. But it's not just that the 1964 murders happened there that make that site politically significant. It's what that fair represents in Mississippi. And there's been some really interesting work that looks at that site, the Neshoba County Fair, as a space where whiteness and white identity is being re-articulated in implicit ways, implicit cultural ways, when you can't have, talk about it in explicit ways anymore. And so it is a space that is known to be white, where blacks are largely excluded, where it's, and people in Mississippi, understand it as such. This is really a white space. And so I think it's not just that this is a space associated with murders, right? But this space itself is about whites remaking themselves in a post-civil rights era. And I think, to some extent, I'm wondering whether going to Tuscumbia, Alabama, and going to the Neshoba County Fair are exactly analogous, right? There's something more going on than the county fair site. So those are my specifics. So two big questions related to memory and thinking about how memory operates. One big question, and this I struggle with a lot in my own work, is how should historians deal with events and individuals that have become iconic, right? And by iconic, I do historical memory. What historical memory scholars see when they say when they mean something to become iconic. I mean, it represents beyond themselves. It has become symbolic of the larger processes. Becoming iconic means you are inherently simplifying. Something comes to stand in for something larger. It is made into an icon, right? And both of these papers seem to me to be participating in a process of trying to complicate events or individuals that have become iconic, trying to complicate a Neshoba County speech that has come to symbolize a larger trajectory of race and post-civil rights politics and say, it's not so simple, right? It's much more complex. Of trying to complicate James Meredith, who remains, this incredible icon of civil rights activism, although he is indeed far more complex. And I have two questions related to that project. One is, how successful can historical narrative be in grappling with the iconic status of an event or an individual? And I was thinking about this as I read the James Meredith paper. Just a real brief story. In maybe 2003, I got a really great gig, which was to go with two BBC reporters who were doing a radio show on civil rights in the South. And so I got to go along with them as their historical consultants. And I met them at the airport in Louisiana, and the first thing they said was, "Oh, we're so excited. We snagged an interview with James Meredith." And they were so excited. And I said, well, okay, fabulous. He's really interesting. And they were, they really wanted him to be, he's our civil rights hero. And we are going to put him in our program as our civil rights hero. And this is 12 years after he supported David Duke, right? So we go to his garage and interview him in his, where he is a mechanic. And the first thing they say is, oh, you civil rights hero. And he says, nothing, I had nothing to do with civil rights. My project wasn't about civil rights at all. Like, well, then the black struggle is like, I'm not black. I'm a Choctaw Indian. And these poor women were fabulous, were just like, desperate to find one sentence they could use in the report. But it really struck me as, all this history has happened. It's not hidden that he was, but he still remains, right, stuck in 63, 62, 63. And what power do we have as historians to challenge those representations that have emotional truth to people? Okay, but the second question I have related to it is, what if historical memory, if not completely accurate, does represent a larger truth that has some meaning? And this is where the Neshoba County speech, I think. I agree with David that actually the historical moment, is far more complicated. And I think he lays out a really great story of how that process is more complicated. I also believe seeing Neshoba County as a symbol of that speech, the symbol of a changing trajectory in American politics, is actually really reasonable. It speaks to a larger truth. And just to quote one memory theorist before I raise my second question here, not a historian, Erwin Zarecki, who argues the claim to truth of icons or representations, quote, rests on their abilities to symbolize the essence of complex historical reality. They don't symbolize complex historical reality. No icon can do that. But if they get the essence of a complex historical reality, then they are speaking a historical truth, even if the historical record is in fact more complicated. And how we as historians deal and think about that, I think, is an interesting question. Second question, and I'll finish up, is how do we as historians assess the cultural and political work being done by particular representations? And this is the part of David's paper I found really, really interesting, where he says pointing to this speech serves to minimize the way in which Democrats are also using racially equivalent language, but also serves to obscure institutionalized racism. In my own work, I think about this process as sort of borrowing Cold War terms, strategies of containment. That when you look at racism in American history, there's always an effort to narrow who's responsible for it, right? And the North is the South, it's their problem. The South is Mississippi. Mississippi is the Klan. Like whoever it is, it's always one step below, right? In my own work, it's like, I studied these old civil rights trials that are being reopened, and it's not that the whole South was problematic, it's these few bad apples. They were the segregationists back then, and we were killing them. Right, so there's this process of narrowing the discourse in order to place blame to remove a possibility of really thinking about systemic racism. So I'm very sympathetic to that claim. On the other hand, I was thinking about, is this particular narrative of the speech participating in that process in the same way? And I thought to some extent, blaming racism on a political party is at least far less narrowing, than blaming it on a few bad apples in the Klan. So it's still keeping racism in the political realm. It's still looking at the way it's institutionalized in political structures. So not that it's not limiting in some fashion, but I guess I wasn't quite as disturbed by the limitations of that narrative as some of the many other strategies of containment that are out there circulating around. And the final thing, just real brief question that I'd love to have all three folks discuss to think about is, are we at a moment where the trajectory of the way in which racism has been coded in language and politics is changing? Thinking back to that Tea Party statement, was this a 30-year period where you see racism being coded? Now that we've got a black president, we don't need to code it anymore. And I think there's potentially really interesting political trajectories going on now that I'd love to hear these folks talk through, because they know more about